Yes.
Great. Well, welcome. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, it is great to be with you. My name is Yako Shotuku, and I am an implementation specialist with the Harmony program based in Brooklyn, New York, but originally from Philly. Fly, Eagles, fly. I am thrilled to be the moderator for today's webinar on moving educator well-being beyond self-care, which is brought to you by Harmony Academy at National University. I am going to share my screen because I haven't done that yet. And you really need to see my name because when I say it and you see it, you may have some questions. So it's taking a bit to get on there, and I have practiced several times already. Interesting. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to try to share one more time. Let's see if we can get it working this time. Isn't technology great when it works? Let's see if we can get it up here. Huh. Fascinating. We are going to try one more time, and I already know that Amanda's probably in moving next mode. What I'm going to ask you to do, fantastic. What I'm going to ask you to do while we're waiting is let me know who you are and where in the world are you. Go ahead and put it in the chat. What's your name? What's your role? And where in the world are you? Like I said, I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. And so we come together and we host these webinars to kind of bring together the best and the brightest. Yeah. Our thought leaders and educators to share best teaching practices and tools to support emotional and academic learning. These presentations are the opinions and content of our guest speakers and may not necessarily be a direct representation of Harmony. All registrants will receive a copy of the recording to watch, to peruse, to rewind, to fast forward, to talk to the screen, and share with your colleagues so be on the lookout for that in your email. We want you to participate. We want this to be engaging. So as things come up for you in the discussion, go ahead and put it in the chat. Let's pretend like we're actually all together in the room and ask questions and put comments in the chat as things come up for you as the discussion continues. So feel free to share your thoughts, your comments, your wonderings, and your questions. And we will have a Q&A section a little bit later. Today's objectives: to understand the complexity of educator well-being and its importance. What does well-being and self-care mean to you? It's kind of subjective, isn't it? What it might mean for me may not be exactly what it means for you. What comes up for you as I say those things? And maybe you want to talk about how it's changed for you, how your beliefs and systems and thought about well-being and care, how it's changed. We're going to identify strategies that move beyond daily self-care to encompass systemic educator well-being. What does it mean for you? What does it mean for you as a part of a team? What does it mean for you in your systems and your process for your school, for your district, for your classroom? And we're going to create action items to promote one's own and others' well-being in your learning community. Yeah. We're going to hear stories from award-winning practitioners who are making this happen, but it's nothing without you. So make sure that you're putting into the chat what you're thinking, the questions you have, and what's coming up for you as we go through this discussion. I love a good discussion. So we're going to do a poll, and Amanda is going to launch the poll, if you would. Amanda, what do you see as being the most important to educator well-being? If you don't see the poll or the question, put it in the chat, let us know. We'll try to get it to you. What do you see as the most important in educator well-being? We've got one that's kind of leading the charge here. Let's see how it's going to end up. Interesting, interesting. I did not form this poll, but interesting. I may have added a different one. I'll be interested in seeing if anyone would have added something to this list that maybe we didn't think about. Is there anything? We're gonna look at your answers here, but I also want you to add, what do you think is missing from this poll? What is essential to you in terms of educator self-care? It looks as if, uh-huh, let's share the results. It looks as if maintaining a good work-life balance is really leading the charge here. So how are you managing it all? How are you getting your work done and making sure that everyone in your family is getting enough attention and you taking care of yourself? The second most popular one was knowing your limits and boundaries. So a smidge of self-awareness for yourself, right? Knowing, yeah, if I take that on, it may push me over the limit or it may trigger me. Yeah. And then what's next? Integrating self-care practices. What's your self-care practice? I'll tell you what mine is. My self-care practice is actually dance class. People at Harmony know I always talk about I go to dance class. It's actually dance class for me. I take African dance class and a kind of contemporary modern bass class, and that is a self-care practice for me. I can't wait to go. We have a community. It's fun. What's yours? Put it in the chat. And the last one is articulates effectively well-being needs with colleagues. So how much do you know me? Do you know what I need in order to, do you know when I need to take a break? Do you know what it means if I withdraw for a couple of minutes or go into my room? How are you communicating? Are you able to see the results, everyone? Give me a thumbs up if you are. Um, how are you able to, do you know me well enough to know what some of my practices are since we work together, right? Just to make sure that I don't, someone's raising their hand. Okay, Chris H, give me 1 second. I'm going to let you get ready because I'm going to let you speak. Do you know your colleagues well enough to know and not misinterpret what their self-care practice is? That's a good one. That's a good one to know. Go ahead, Chris H. Do you want to come off mute and chime in real quick?
I think they'll have to use the question and answer box to reach out to us.
Okay. Do they did Chris H, because they've raised their hand. Have they said anything? Because I won't be able to see it. Amanda?
I think we're okay. Yeah, let's keep moving. I'll keep monitoring the question and answer box for you.
Okay, great. So, welcome to our best and brightest today. Welcome to our presenters. We have our very own Dr. Nick Yoder, a PhD in psychology and education. Dr. Yoder leads content and research at the Harmony Academy, which provides curriculum, classroom resources, and professional development tools to rural and urban and suburban schools across the United States. And we're also in Africa and some other places. So we are not just US, but we're global. His work focuses on research, policy, content development, and professional learning. Joining Dr. Nick Yoder is the amazing Dr. Lorea, and I hope I'm saying that right, Dr. Lorea Martinez. She is an award-winning founder of Heart, Heart, Heart in Mind, and I've got my copy, a company dedicated to helping schools and organizations integrate social, emotional, and academic learning in their practices, products, and learning communities. Dr. Martinez is a faculty member at Columbia University Teachers College, educating aspiring principals in emotional intelligence. We've also got Josie McLean, a second grade teacher from representing Arizona. Josie is a second grade teacher in rural Arizona and is passionate about culturally responsive practices and brain breaks. In 2023, Miss McLean was named a top 10 finalist for the Arizona Rural Teacher of the Year and currently serves as a member of our very own Harmony Educator Advisory Group. We have one of those. And last and certainly not least, as I have been on several panels with Miss Melody Hawkins, she is an award-winning educator, author, and visionary educational leader who is committed to addressing disparities in K through 12 education. Ms. Hawkins is a National University doctoral candidate, a district science instructional facilitator, and a member of the Harmony Educator Advisory Group. So, welcome, panel. We are excited about what you have to say. We're excited about the discussion that's about to go forth, and we're really, really happy about it. But as you know, if it's a harmony time, we've got to have a quick connection card. That's just how we roll. And so I want everybody to make sure that you participate in this card with this card. I'm going to read it for you. What do you wish you could spend more time doing? And our context for this card is a quote by Nelson Mandela, which says, "We must use time wisely and forever realize that the time is always right to do right." Now, what I want you to do, I'm going to take a little spin on this card. I want you to either respond to the top of the question, but you can also respond to how the quote resonates with you. Yeah, we must use time wisely and forever realize that the time is always right to do right. As we're just coming off Dr. Martin Luther King, somebody who knew how to use their time to do right. Yeah. What does this quote mean to you, or what do you wish you could spend more time doing? Amanda, I've got to hear from the people. What are they saying?
At this point, we'd love to hear from our panelists, and I will let you know what comes in through the Q&A.
Fantastic. So Josie, you look really eager to answer. So I'm going to you first. So you can answer any aspect of the card that you wish.
Okay. I was originally going to answer the question and say, I would love to spend more time reading for pleasure and not just for work or productivity. And so carving out that designated time for that.
Love that. I'm going to press you, Josie. How do you think you're going to do it?
I'm setting a goal for myself. So last year, I set an annual goal for 75 books, and I did not make it. I had 66 books, and I was kind to myself that it does not matter if you meet your goal or not, but I'm trying for 75 again, and I think audiobooks do count as reading in some
Yes, they
sense.
do.
So I listen to my books while I walk my dog, and it's kind of a 2 for 1, and being able to have that time outside while also reading. And so that is how I am going to try to achieve that goal and hold myself accountable.
I love that, Josie. I guarantee you, you've just inspired at least 10 people who had that same goal and are like, yeah, wait a minute, audiobooks, that's right. So awesome. And thank you for that. Who would like to go next? Dr. Martinez, how would you like to answer this question? What resonates or comes up for you?
Well, since the webinar is focused on educator well-being, I want to answer the question. And for me, I wish I had more time for running. I love to run. I feel for me, that's the exercise that helps me to release stress and get my mind ready to face the day. But I have 2 young kids and a dog. So the 3 of them take the priority in my morning. But the way that I'm trying to get more runs in, I got a hands-free leash for my dog for the holidays. And that means that I'm able to walk the dog and sometimes run a little bit at the same time. So that's how I'm getting more runs in during the week. And on the weekend, normally I try to go for a long run on Saturday. So
I love that, Dr. Martinez. I am pretty sure someone's going to go to Amazon and look up a hands-free leash. I'm almost sure of it. I'm almost sure of it. Yeah, they're going to look it up and wonder, really? What's that? So great. You just inspired some folks too. Um, Melody.
So Josie and I are thinking the same. I wish I could spend more time reading just for fun. I am currently deep down in the throes of reading about all the things that are going on in education and how to support teachers and how to build myself up as a leader. And it's interesting and it's fun, but sometimes I just want to just nerd out on some like science fiction, fantasy type things. So what I think I'm going to do is do what Josie said and check out some audiobooks and work that into my morning routine, maybe. That's a great idea. Thank you, Josie.
I told you, Josie. I told you were going to inspire folks today.
Can
Awesome.
I
And
add that the library has free audiobooks that you can put on your phone? So
there you go. Awesome. Awesome. Nick, what say you?
Well, I mean, I was gonna do reading for pleasure too, but that's already been taken twice now, so I feel repetitive doing that. So I don't feel like I can do that. So I'll respond to the quote, and I think I'm gonna respond to the quote in a way that connects it to well-being and self-care.
Okay.
I think when we are saying we can use time wisely and always right to do right. Most people probably, particularly us educators, probably think external, doing right by others. But at the same time, it's also right, like we can be right by ourselves, right? And part of that is that self-care piece of it too, right? So we can be right for others. So I'm going to connect that quote to our topic today.
And I'm going to push you, Nick, just a little bit. As you know, that's not anything new with me. What
Not
does
at
it
all.
mean? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for you to do right by you?
Oh, it depends upon, I think, the moment in the day. Sometimes it's a good cry. Sometimes it's a bath. Sometimes it's a good run. Sometimes it's reading a book. So I think that's when to use time wisely. It's really paying attention to what you need when you need it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I love that. And just for those of you who might be new to Harmony, we use these quick connections is one of the, I don't know, one of the hallmarks of what we use in our program. And it's an opportunity and a strategy that we have at Harmony to get your students to really spend some quality time with one another, not a long time, but quality time with one another. And really for them to get to know each other, for them to get to know the adults that are around them. So we really do love using quick connection cards. So thank you for that. So what we're going to move into right now is Dr. Yoder is going to share with us some practice and some policy to support educator well-being. So because time flies when you're having fun, Nick, take it away.
Thanks, Yako. Appreciate you kicking us off. The one thing, you can go to the next slide. One of the things that's I think really important that Yako mentioned um, is really thinking about kind of the why now and then what is well-being, right? Like those are the first two things, and then we'll talk a little bit about kind of a framework because this session is really about beyond self-care, right? And I think as you all are quite well aware, we're definitely aware as a university too, and a program is that mental health well-being is on the rise. You can't look at pretty much any statistic to say that educator stress is at an all-time high. It's still above pre-pandemic levels. It's downticked a little bit since the pandemic, but is definitely still higher. Educators are pretty much higher than any other industry currently. That's impacting mental health. It's impacting chronic absenteeism. It's impacting retention and people wanting to stay in the workforce, right? So it's impacting in a crux as a core issue. And one of the things that is really important to know and that we have learned is that people are so tired of hearing this idea of self-care, right? Like we just kind of noted the things that we need to do for ourselves, right? And there is some individual responsibility for what we need, but the system, right? We all live in systems, whether it's, you know, our familial system, our community system, our education system, our church system, our gym system, Yako's dance system, right? We're all in these systems that really can both promote and facilitate our health, our well-being, or diminish it. So you can go to the next slide, Yako. And Yako hit this really nicely on, you know, in her opening remarks, is that when we're thinking of well-being, we all define it as something different, right? So if you kind of take a moment and pause and reflect and think about, like, what did it mean to feel well yesterday? Maybe the day before, right? Probably one day, maybe you were super anxious. Maybe another day you felt super energetic. Maybe the other day you felt really cared for. Maybe the other day you felt really accomplished. Another day you didn't feel your stomach hurt, right? And so all of these things influence, like, they're all well-being, right? When we talk about well-being and wellness, all of those things ring true, right? And so it's really important as we're beginning to conceptualize what we're talking about when we feel well. What does that really mean? Because because that's really going to be important of how you take care of yourself, and then how as a system work to take care of you, recognizing that we have different needs and different moments, right? As we as adults, as kids, as systems, all that together. So when we're thinking about well-being, then it's multidimensional. We know that that is dependent, like there's multiple pieces to it. Like it's objective, it's cognitive, it's social, it's emotional, it's psychological, it's financial, it's spiritual, it's all of these things, right? We also know that it's contextually dependent, right? So I just got back from a work trip, and you know, I got here like an hour and a half before, so I was like really rushed. And then whenever I get to, you know, chat with Yako, I'm always super energized because she just brings that love and joy to work. So now I'm a little bit more uplifted, right? So my well-being shifted, right, based on kind of my social context. It's resource dependent. How many resources do we actually have? It's both inclusive of objective components, right? So do you have a stomach ache? Do you have cramps? Do you have knots in your neck, right? Like it's those things that like you can feel. It's the amount of actual resources that you get. It's the actual workload that you have versus subjective components. Oh, I feel great today. Or I think I have enough money to go on a trip, or the trip that I really want to, or scale back, right? Like, and so those types of things can be subjective. And it's both dependent on the group, right? We know that emotion contagions are real things. So how you are actually feeling is also really dependent upon the other people around you, particularly when we think about systems like leaders. Work emotions influence the staff. Staff influences the kids, you know, the family, kind of like the kids then can go out and influence the families, and it's all reciprocal, right? So the more the emotions that are around you are kind of the emotions that you pick up on and kind of grow. So it's really important to think about kind of the well-being of both oneself, but also the group as a whole. So one of the things that we do, you can go to the next slide, Yako. One of the things that I did when I used to work at the American Institutes for Research for a while, is we were working with a number of state education agencies, and then also with some educators, of really beginning to think about what is this idea beyond self-care. I know when I was a teacher, what did it mean for like my principal to take care of me, the families to take care of me, take care of myself, take care of each other as colleagues, right? So what were those conditions that we had that influenced our well-being? But there's also personal like factors that can influence, right? So we did a deep dive into the literature to really kind of showcase that we can't just talk about well-being and self-care and assume like that is going to solve the problem of well-being, right? Because it's not. Because as we know from the literature, that the well-being is influenced by our systems and the conditions in which we are surrounded by. Right. And so we kind of showcase these, and there's if you click on that QR code, you can do like a deeper dive into sort of the conditions and the personal factors. Because I'm just doing like a kind of high level overview here. Is you really can think about the working conditions in like three big buckets, right? Like, what does it mean for your relationships? Like, how are you engaging in the relationship as a whole? What does it mean for the environment? Right. So how is the environment structured? And your actually career development trajectory conditions influence how you're working. So relational, what does it mean for the school leader? What are the jobs of the school leader? What are those communities and structures that are put in place in your school to allow you to kind of have those relational components? What does it mean, kind of the discipline system that's in your school, and like how consistent is that being implemented across the folks within your school, right? Like all of these pieces are relational because they influence how we influence with others in the building, but they're conditional, right? Like the school discipline code is a school discipline code, and how we implement that is how we implement, right? So all of these things are important. Environment, right, is highly influences, right? Do you have heat, right? Some people don't have heat. How's the bathrooms, how's the water, how's the classroom set up? Like that's going to influence how you feel, how you kind of interact. Do you have enough resources to do your work? Like that's a piece of it. Do you have enough, what's your working conditions and what's your workload? That influences, right? And then your career development. So do you have enough professional learning? Do you see a career trajectory, a path, right? All of these things influence it because it influences like your sense of accomplishment, safety, belonging, and all of these things influence our well-being, but also recognizing that all of those environmental conditions interact with a variety of our social emotional competencies, kind of our beliefs and motivations of who we are and how we interact in the world, and our experiences and our characters, right? And so it's really important to navigate both what we can do and what's in our locus of control, but also thinking about how can we ensure that the conditions are being met, and how are we kind of advocating for ourselves, right? Because that's a competence, social emotional competency, and how are we advocating for those conditions to move forward? So I'm actually going to bring, so that's my quick spiel on kind of some of this high level research. And I think I'm going to bring on Dr. Martinez to kind of join the conversation with myself and Jaco.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So, Dr. Martinez, I'm so excited for you to be a part of this conversation. I've got a couple questions for both you and Nick. The first one is this. How do you believe, Dr. Martinez, the notion or idea of self-care has changed or shifted over the last couple of years? What was it? What has it moved to? Where is it now?
Thank you for asking that question. Such an important consideration as we are thinking about changes that have happened, particularly after the pandemic. And I would say, referring back to the framework of educator well-being that Dr. Yoder presented, it's almost like the first phase of the work was very focused on those individual factors, like the individual skills of educators. And I would say that even within that, there was a very small subset. What I would say, they were like wellness activities that school districts were promoting, and they were telling teachers, go take this yoga class after school, or here's a resource to do a guided meditation, just do it when you get home. And I think the reason why self-care got a bad reputation is because it was really putting almost like the fault on the educator, right? That the message, the way that that message was received by teachers was, this is your fault. The fact that you are feeling overwhelmed, stressed, that it is very hard for you to cope with the uncertainty that we lived through the pandemic, coming back to the classroom and having students that have higher behavioral needs that we have ever seen before. I think all of those conditions that we found in our classrooms and schools, it was put on the educator. Go fix it, right? Go fix it for yourself in your individual and interior life. And that's why some of those initiatives didn't have the benefit, and really there was a pushback from educators towards that. I think that pretty quickly school districts and organizations realized that they were missing like the upper part of the framework, right? Like really looking at what are the reasons why educators are feeling this way. And then there has been some work done around collecting that data and asking teachers, how can we better support you? What are some things that we can do that would minimize that stress level? And those things pointed towards those working conditions, right? And being able to provide more planning time. I think that that's one of those universal interventions for teachers, where if you are asked to implement a new curriculum or there are changes in your schedule, you're going to need time to prepare, to respond to students' needs, right? Asking for more support from other adults in the building. So all of those things, I think, are now being part of this conversation, and we are now seeing the impact of really looking more holistically at educator well-being. And I want to say something about the particular aspect of the adult SEL skills. I also think that for a long time, the school districts were almost using it as, we have these supports for students, we're going to turn them around and just make them work for adults. And that's not respectful to adult development and adult learning. So really creating space for adults to develop their own SEL skills is important, but you have to do it in a way that is respectful, that is inclusive of all educators and what they are bringing to the table, and where you don't have a specific outcome in mind, where educators really can come to that conversation and to that development with all the multiple layers of their identities, and very much show up in authentic ways.
So many points. I wrote some of them down. That's such good points that you bring up. Nick, I want to ask you this, and it's kind of a little bit piggybacking off of what Dr. Martinez talked about. There are going to be some people that are a part of this webinar that are having some aha moments, or they're going to be be charged, if you will, to go back to their respective places and do something. Yeah. What is, and Dr. Martinez, feel free, both of you feel free to weigh in or add to any question that I might be asking the other. Nick, where is for classrooms, schools, districts, what is the starting place for this self-care business? How, there may be a team somewhere that says, well, yeah, we want to do this. We see how it's changing, but where do we start? What's the starting place for this? And again, after you finish, Dr. Yoder, feel free, Dr. Martinez, if you want to add in.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Yako. And I think one of the places that, I mean, I'm a researcher at heart, so I'm always going to start with the data. But I think in this case, it's a lot of qualitative data. So when you're with your teams, it's like really defining what does well-being and wellness mean to you. And I don't, if no one's seen this, so the previous Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, created a report on workforce well-being, and then the conditions that really influence workers' well-being. And I think one of the core things that's really important in this framework overall is that both considers what do the conditions look like, right? So there's 5 conditions: protection from harm, connection and community, work-life harmony. And we did not ask him to put harmony in there, it just happens to be in there. Mattering at work, and opportunity for growth, right? Like those are the 5 overarching conditions. And those conditions each influence how one's going to feel about a particular aspect, right? So how, when you're thinking about well-being, it's like, how do you make meaning of your work? Do you feel accomplished at your work, right? Are you learning, right? Or learning and accomplishment, like those are really centered on opportunity for growth. But if you really want a work-life harmony, do you have autonomy and flexibility in your work, right? And so really thinking about a good place to start is, what does that mean and look like for you to have flexibility and autonomy in your working environment, and ultimately to have that work-life harmony, right? Like that's a kind of a good central place, I think, to start, is just coming together with some common language and common needs, so that way people within your system can begin influencing kind of like those things and kind of doing those immediate things. And then you kind of want to take that's kind of like your close ecosystem. And then you want to look out a little bit further in that ecosystem, and then saying, okay, what is really impacting how I feel accomplished, or what is really impacting my work-life balance? What is really impacting my ability to feel safe in my environment and supported? And are there ways to structure them in a more cohesive way that also works for other people too, right? Because we're in this collective together. So, right, like that's why it's important to have that initial conversation, because how one might feel accomplished or safe might be different than how someone else is, right? And so trying to create that kind of infrastructure for each other, I think, is just really important. So it really is important for, I think, leaders and you all and staff and students to come together and think about what well-being means for each other, and then how do we kind of begin creating and doing like a deep analysis of like what are the systems that are inhibiting it and what are encouraging it.
Nick, the link that you just put in the chat, does that include those 5 conditions that you just talked about? Because if not, repeat them
Yep,
again.
it does include those 5 conditions.
It
It's a
does include
really
those
lovely
5. All right,
graphic. Yep.
everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So those 5 that he just talked about are in that chat. Dr. Martinez, do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. Yes. And I completely agree with Dr. Yoder that having the data, right? The data points, we need to have those conversations. And even like as a step prior, like focusing on relationships, to me, that's the foundation of any of the work around well-being that we have to do in our schools and our school districts, because if we don't create spaces where people can come forward and have those open, honest conversations about why I'm not able to sleep at night and why I'm like very reactive in staff meetings, people are not going to provide that data, right? They are going to maybe say what's politically correct in my school, in my institution. But in order to have those open conversations, we need to really focus on those relationships, right? What is the climate for the adult, and what are those working conditions? And unless we prioritize those relationships, people will not come forward with the real experience and the reality of how they experience the toll that teaching takes on educators. So I think that relationships is an important point. The other thing that I wanted to mention is some work that I've been doing in California, where I live, where we have formed communities of practice to develop social emotional skills for educators. And these communities of practice have been hosted by county offices of education, and they have been open to the educators in those counties. And it has provided an opportunity for teachers, school leaders, counselors to come together with the goal of strengthening their own social emotional skills in a space that is a cohort based. So you are with the same group of people for a period of 10 weeks. And it has created, I think, a very helpful environment to be able to really look at those skills and with some assessment tools, be able to identify, well, I thought I was really strong in empathy, and it sounds like I'm not as strong in empathy as I thought. And now I have an opportunity with my cohort to develop my skills. And I think from the data that we have collected in these communities of practice, teachers are thirsty for meaningful professional development that they want to take. So I think there's something about agency, like Dr. Yoder was saying earlier, and being able to choose, this is something that I want for myself. I want to increase my social and emotional capacity to deal with my stress, to have more resilience. And we can do that, but we have to do that in communities. So having those examples, it gives me a lot of hope that there are models that we have to develop the social emotional capacity of educators in a way that is supportive, and that it brings us together to enact that collective responsibility that if you are not well, I cannot be entirely well either, right? That this is not us as individuals, but as a collective, really working together to improve the well-being, our general well-being.
I love that. We're about to bring Josie and Melody in, but as a former teacher here in New York City, I will not be able to live with myself if I do not ask both of you this question, and both of you have pointed to this. When you're talking about agency and autonomy and flexibility of employees, if you will, follow me on this. Now you're talking about systems, right? And so we all know how difficult it is to change a system. So if we're looking at all the stakeholders, right, the principal, the teacher, the parent, what have you, how does the collective, and I kind of think I'm kind of know the answer, but you may say something else. Nick kind of alluded to getting together as a cohort and discussing this, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. How does the collective change the system when the system is interconnected to other systems that may not share in the urgency and the need of the well-being of the group? Did you follow me on that?
Yeah, I mean it's a great point, Yako, right? Because when we're thinking about this, it might feel discouraging because no, the whole system is not in your locus of control, right? The educational system is quite complex, in the infrastructure that currently exists. So what I would say though is to put within your locus of control is that you can create your own systems, right? So you know that puts more agency on self, but it's also a way to think about what are those systems that are in your locus of control and what can you do. And as you kind of build that, right? So maybe it's your first year grade level team, and then maybe it's the I was a first grade teacher, then maybe it's the early elementary team, and then maybe it's the whole elementary school, right? And so I think it's about one, kind of identifying kind of what is that system that you can put in that local control to begin setting up some of those pieces, right? Maybe you as a group want to focus on accomplishment, so you're going to keep group goals together, and you're going to now, like, or maybe some harmony goals as a team, right? And kind of moving that forward, and then so that's kind of the starting point. Or maybe you do your own buddy up across your, I'm just going to bring it back to harmony because I always love harmony, and then maybe you do a buddy up across the school where you're now paired every day to another staff, or every week to a new staff member. So maybe you don't talk to the cafeteria worker, the janitor, the security guard often, but that buddy up system might if you do that weekly, right? So it's about creating some of these systems and support structures that you can move, and at the same time, and we'll pop this in the chat too, is we do have a unit on a couple of units in our Harmony Professional Learning Pathways on educator well-being, and one of them is focused on kind of like managing up and advocacy. So then how can you begin to advocate for self in various domains, and you kind of increase that. And there's also a great book by Tish Jennings on educator advocacy that I would highly recommend as well.
I've got to bring in Josie and Melody. Josie and Melody, turn your cameras on. Get in here. I am gonna hold space towards the end, Dr. Martinez, to ask you about your book, but I want to make sure that I bring in Melody and Josie in this conversation. So Nick has a couple questions that he's gonna ask you and bring you into the conversation.
Great. So yeah, so Dr. Martinez and I have been really talking about it from like a systems kind of research, big perspective level, right? But Josie and Melody, like you are in it, right? You are the educators that we are here to hope to support. So we definitely are excited to chat with you about it. So what I really want, my first question is for you, Josie, and as a practitioner, right? What practices do you find most important as a teacher to support like your own well-being and the well-being of kind of your group? And what challenges do you see to make it a focus for educators to focus on well-being, both kind of self and then collective?
I just want to say that I had some notes written and they mirrored what both of you were mentioning so beautifully. Like, I'm just on the same track of mind with my answer to your question. And I'm also going to admit that I am on the tail end of a cold. So with that being said, our 100% doesn't always look the same every day. And I think that was mentioned before, how if you're dealing with a chronic illness or something outside of your control or something in your home life, that is one of the challenges, right? That sometimes my 100% is up here, and sometimes I can only give so much on another day. And we have to give ourselves the kind of grace we give our students, because if we're committing to our student and educator or student well-being as educators, then we need to do that for ourselves as well. So I kind of want to start with the challenges that I see. One of them that you said, the systemic pressures of things that are outside of our control. And I was actually just doing some research with my administrator, and we found that about 60%, more or less, at least, factors that go into student learning are outside of our control, like a student's home life or their nutrition or the amount of sleep that they get. Sorry, we're still in school, so there are children in the hallway right now, if you hear them. Those things are out of our control. And so that's something that I'm a very much like type A personality. I think most teachers were organized, and we are givers, and we give of ourselves. And we can only give so much with an outcome that we hope for, before we have to also have those boundaries. So I think a systemic pressure or systems outside of our control is a challenge. I also think cultural expectations. I feel like going into education, I didn't realize as like an eager young college graduate that we're kind of expected to be on all the time as teachers. Like, it was very hard to find my boundaries and work-life balance, because it's constantly going through my head. How are my students doing? What are they going to be doing this weekend? Like, how much sleep did they get? Like, I need to, like, every little thing about our students we think about. And that can take away from us and our home lives and our families too. And a lack of resources, I say, would be another challenge, which schools are working on. We get funding, we have programs like Harmony. So it's finding the right program for your school and not putting too much on educators to have a new program. But I would say, in supporting well-being, one of the practices, we throw around self-care all the time, but what does that look like? And I think it can be baby steps, like with our goals of what do we wish we want to do more, like reading. It's like 40 to 75 days. Everyone says something different to create a new habit, right? So for me, and especially with right now, this time of year being a new year for us, but halfway through the school year where a lot of our educator energies are down here, just like one basic practice we can implement every day. Like, I'm going to commit to my language lesson today. I'm going to commit to drinking my water today, and just the baby steps of that. And Dr. Martinez mentioned professional development. This is the time of year that I was feeling so burnt out, and finding uplifting, powerful professional development, like something as simple as tuning into this webinar or going somewhere and being surrounded by a community of like-minded individuals who have the same shared common goal, which is being kind to ourselves and kind to our students, and having them be successful. And recognition and appreciation goes a long way too when it comes to our communities, and being able to just be acknowledged by your peers, your administrators, and then giving that acknowledgement and recognition to your colleagues.
Great. Oh, there were so many little tidbits in there that I just absolutely love, Josie. And the one that I think is like that I just really want to elevate too is I loved that you had a juxtaposition between there's so much on our plates, we're constantly thinking about something, but what is that one thing I'm going to do that I can actually accomplish this day, right? So really trying to break down all of the noise in your head to one thing a day so that you can really focus on and center yourself on, both for yourself and for your students. So I really love that one. So thanks for kind of bringing that together. Melody, at the administrator level, what have you seen as successful to support educator well-being where it becomes a priority for the site? And what advice do you have for other administrators for implementing policies school-wide, district-wide, or the working conditions that really influence the culture?
Thank you for that question. I've really enjoyed listening to everyone's reflections and responses. It feels so good to be around like-minded believers and dreamers and visionaries. And a lot of what I'm about to say is going to echo what has already been said, but from the administrator perspective, from the building leader or district leader perspective, because I really do believe that when self-care became this topic that needed to happen, there was this disconnect between how saying have self-care teachers, but what does that look like? And I completely believe that there was a misunderstanding or a missed opportunity rather for leaders to really hone in and support teachers and classroom educators and anyone supporting students and youth with really understanding what that looks like and what that means without making them feel like it was their fault that they needed that self-care. So what I have seen really are some of the things that have been echoed, but what I have seen is a support or a really good focus on systems, culture, and leadership. And in terms of systems, really thinking about how can we create intentional systems of support that offer learning opportunities that matter to educators. So for instance, if we see that around midway through the year, there's usually a barrier, there's usually a struggle with staying resilient or a little bit of compassion fatigue that typically happens when you are the recipient of some secondary trauma when you're in the classroom or in a school building. What can we as administrators go ahead and pre-plan for? We could go ahead and pre-plan for a discussion around a topic or having a quick workshop about managing compassion fatigue or managing setting boundaries or how to stay resilient under stress, and going ahead and being proactive and setting that as a part of our professional learning culture. And that in itself is a system of support. Doing it that way makes sure that we're sending a message as an administrator that I'm not expecting my teachers to just figure it out on their own. I'm going to provide tools, I'm going to provide resources, and even beyond tools and resources, I'm going to give them a space to help them navigate the challenges that they face. And that really makes a big difference. And then in terms of the culture piece, like if you think about organizational culture and the school culture and the environment, we know that we thrive, individuals, human beings thrive when we feel heard and valued. And it's not enough to just tell a teacher or tell an educator what's happening. They need to have a say in decisions about policies, about workloads, about school initiatives. And when they're included in the process, it really does build trust. It builds that sense of ownership. And in many ways, that's going to throw off any lingering or any potential for discouragement or feeling defeated or feeling a lack of motivation, because you now have ownership of this school initiative. You now have ownership of the things going on within your building because your leader gave you an opportunity to share your voice and your thoughts. And it was mentioned, I think Josie mentioned, celebrating wins and hearing from an administrator, administrators checking in when they see that someone is having a hard time. And recognizing that 100 looks different every single day. 100 looks different every single day, but it really takes the administrator having a relationship with the teacher to be able to recognize that, oh, 100 looks different today for this teacher. Let me check in and make sure they're okay in an authentic way, in a caring and compassionate way, to help create that environment where they feel emotionally and socially supported. And then the third thing that I think is very important that I have seen play out on both sides, where it's a positive and it has helped, and then where it has not helped, is addressing workload and boundaries. Telling teachers to care for themselves doesn't mean much if our teachers are overwhelmed with tasks and the tasks are leaving them with no time or no energy to do anything else. So as an administrator, we have to take a close look at the workload. Is this manageable? And are we giving and asking for something that is beyond a person's capacity? Are we protecting planning time? Are we limiting after-hour emails and meetings? yes, it was great to have this wonderful fall festival, but did we host it at a time in the past that it might not have been best for the majority of our staff to participate? Maybe we need to rethink that. And some of these things along the way, it shows how much we respect and value the time and mental health of the people that we support as administrators. And we've heard it all the time, right? Like, we can't pour from an empty cup. So teachers can't pour everything out of them into a student if they're running empty. And I believe something that I would say to like offer a little piece of advice for administrators is, it really does begin with having open conversations. Like, so don't just guess, ask. Have open conversations with staff about what they need. Partner with district leaders and push for real changes. As a teacher, I fully expected for my administrator to advocate for me. And on the flip side, I was going to advocate for my students. So I need someone advocating for me. If I'm a teacher, if I'm a staff member in a building, I expect my administrator and my leader to do that. So advocate for flexibility in some district initiatives. Advocate for, I know that we have this big thing coming out from the district, but maybe we need to do it in a different way. Most importantly, leading by example. If we as leaders and as administrators, whether that's in the building or at the district level or even the state level, if we don't model healthy boundaries and prioritize our own well-being, then how can we expect our staff to do it, right? So I really believe creating the systems of support, the culture of care, and really thinking about how can we support staff with workload and boundaries, that we're moving beyond this surface level idea of self-care and really getting into the core of how we can truly support the adults who are supporting our students.
Thank you so much, Melody. I just love too the connections that you all made between really the idea of like the system, right? When Yaku, to your question, like the system keeps going up, right? So like teachers are supporting students and leaders are supporting their teachers, and then the district leaders should be supporting the school leaders, right? And so really thinking about how each part, if we all kind of work as a system together, then we can really begin to make some of that change. So I really loved how you both highlighted that. Just to round us out before we move on, Dr. Martinez, I want you to talk a little bit about your book, Teaching with a Heart and Mind, and how educators and leaders can really use this tool and really showcases some of the great work, even that like exemplifies, the things that Melody and Josie were talking about.
Sure. So very briefly, I would say that I'm a former special ed teacher. That's where I started my career in education. And I wrote this book to address some of the misconceptions that I had seen in SEL implementation after 10 years supporting schools as a consultant. That's the way that this book was born. And I think within the realm of educator well-being, there's a whole section in the book looking at the wholehearted educator. How do you model, facilitate, and practice SEL skills for yourself? And for those of you who are not familiar with the word, HEART is an acronym that identifies 5 essential social emotional skills. And the book has indicators of mastery that goes all the way from kindergarten to adults. So if you are wondering how you should be practicing SEL skills, that's a good tool. And it has an assessment that you can take on your own and figure out what are your strengths and areas of growth. So that's a tool that is readily available for you that maybe can start good conversations within your family and in your school building.
That is so awesome. And so I want to let everybody know, I've got my copy. I'm reading it, Dr. Martinez. I'm not finished yet, but I'm reading it. We've mentioned the book, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to get theirs. For an opportunity to win one of 5 of the Heart and Mind books by Dr. Martinez, if you are one of the first 5, I believe, to tag us on Harmony Academy LinkedIn with one takeaway from the webinar, winners will be selected by random number generator for all who tag us during the next 7 days with this takeaway. I know I just said a mouthful, not sure I understand myself. The opportunity to win one of the 5 books runs from January the 23rd to January the 27th, and book winners will be notified on January 31st via direct message on LinkedIn. This giveaway is not sponsored, endorsed, or administered by LinkedIn. You know, we got legal to worry about, right? So I had to say those words. I want to thank you, everybody. We are literally at 1 minute left, and I'm going to say, I'm going to give 1 minute. I better hurry up. Is there anyone that has something from our panel that has something pressing, some last words that they want to leave us with as we wrap up? And as I talk to you, as I show you, how we at Harmony develop our healthy relationships. That's like our tagline motto, if you will, is the building of healthy relationships. And we do that by our Harmony professional learning and our Harmony curriculum. So take a picture of that QR code and learn a little bit more about us, or call us, or talk to us, or email us, and we can talk to you a bit more about how we help teachers, educators, and students to develop more healthy relationships. Is there anyone that just has any pressing kind of last words you want to leave us with? Anyone? Bueller? If not, I'm going to give the last word to Dr. Martinez as she rolls us out. Dr. Martinez, what are your last words and final thoughts for us as we part? But we're all energized and motivated to go to our respective places and do something.
Yes, I would just say that educator well-being matters. This is a topic that is important, not only because educators are working with our kids in schools, but also because their ability to be well is important as adults, as human beings. So I think that this is a collective effort to work for ourselves first, right? That's the first step, to include ourselves in the equation, and then to extend the work in any capacity that we can from our roles to be able to influence and work towards a better educator workforce so they can enjoy longevity in the schools and in school districts. So it is work worth doing, and let's go, let's do it.
That is awesome. And we really take lunch for granted, don't we, when we don't have it after 3 days. Thanks again to our amazing presenters and panelists. We also thank each of you for being a part and for staying with us till the end and taking time out of your busy schedule and attending today's webinar. Don't forget, we will send you a copy of this webinar. Be on the lookout for a survey popping up on your screen. We appreciate you sharing your feedback on the survey. We really do look at surveys, and we really try to fashion what you want to hear and what you want to talk about in our webinars. So thank you. Have an awesome rest of your day. Have an awesome weekend, and we hope to see you next month for our next webinar, February 25th, Academic Integration: Strategies for a More Holistic School. Thank you. Be well. Take care of yourself, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.